Welcome to my video where I completely dismantle and reconnect this Dell Optiplex 7010. Now I want to make this video not just for somebody who wants to do this for the specific model, but just to talk about computers in general and the general processes that you'll face when whether you're going and doing a home built scenario or otherwise. Now this isn't a clear-cut how-to video, but I want it to be as accurate as I possibly can while also discussing general computer concepts. Now the GoPro whatever is on my head, so if you don't get a clear shot of everything, I do apologize. The first tool you'll need is a P2 screwdriver. I like to have a nice flat head handy. A multi-tool in general will help out, especially one with pliers for grabbing cable connectors. And then you will also need this. Now this may look like a pipe wrench, but it's actually a boot stick. What you're going to do with this is shake it at the monitor whenever it refuses to boot, and then the computer will get the picture. I'm just kidding, come on. I was looking in the toolbox for my stuff and I was like, yeah, that'd be a funny bit. Okay, so obviously you should disassemble this thing unplugged, and when it comes to handling electronics, a lot of people recommend you get anti-static wristbands or stuff like that. I agree. That is best practice. Go ahead and do it. However, I'm not going to do it because I don't have any handy and I don't really want to. On most PCs, the first thing I remove is the PSU because it's the biggest thing that's going to get in the way of pretty much everything. And it's nice to get most of your cabling out of the way so that way you can make heads or tails out of different components and the like. So how to remove your PSU, if we can rotate this, get the light on it. Okay, in the PSU, these are the fan screws for the fan that's internal to the PSU. Please be careful not to touch the components within a PSU because they could have energized capacitors. I suggest demounting all four of these screws and putting them in a separate container for safekeeping. I'm gonna cut this part of the video out and then just pan to a completely unscrewed PSU. All four of the case mounting screws are gone from the PSU. We should be able to pull it out. Now, the Dell Optiplexes are kind of tricky when it comes to how you slide out the PSUs. There should be a tab here, down there. I hope you can see it in the shot. You need to depress the tab and push the PSU back. Once it's sitting on the tab, you can let go. And then this is the latch for the case. You push back on the latch, and then grab the PSU and pull it outwards. Now, we have our PSU free floating, but our cables are suspending it to the motherboard. So, with the light out of the way, we're going to grab the CPU fan, pinch, and pull. We're going to get any SATA cables that is attached to any of the components out of the way. The SATA cable here is attached to my hard drive, so I'm going to unplug that as well. And now, all that leaves is our main motherboard power connector, which we can pinch and pull. Now, these connectors can get kind of tight, so if you want to use a pair of pliers to grab the arm of the connector and pull upwards, you're more than welcome to. Just please be careful not to damage the computer pieces. Okay, Now the main reason why I am disassembling this, aside from the purposes of the video, is because of the fact that the eBay seller sold this as is, and the cleanliness condition of this office PC is not to my liking, nor is it to the liking of the next person that comes after me, whether it's somebody that I'm selling it to or a friend that I'm giving a gift for. This being the case, I'm going to do everything in my best interest to remove everything and get it done. Now, I can go any sort of direction with this, right? Most people would remove the drive, which I have zip tied. That is not an official method of mounting drives. I suggest you do not do that. Most people would disconnect connectors. Some people would say, oh, remove the CPU mount. Now, that is a good choice if you have a small Intel connector like this, a small Intel cooler system like this. If you have a Hyper 212, that may also be a good choice. I'm going to keep it on because I don't want to destroy the seam of the new thermal compound that I've installed onto the CPU that I did recently in my anti-seize versus thermal compounding video that I suggest you go watch. The reason why I don't want to take it off is because, one, it'll create a mess if I'm not careful. Two, I don't need the CPU to be exposed, nor do I want the pins exposed while I'm working on different components, working on unmounting different components. So my next target would be this fan, this chassis fan, which is mounted here. You simply pinch and unplug. Now I'm actually curious if I even have to pinch at all, so all I'm doing is grabbing it and pulling. And no, you do have to pinch on the middle connector, the middle latch right here. You depress that and you pull up. Cool. So I already had a video about fan grommets, and these were already lubricated, but I don't think there was a proper amount of light in that video to really orchestrate this point that I was trying to illustrate. So with these lubricated, of which I already did, which I'll do one more time, I will take my choice of lubrication, which in this case is anti-seize. Now, a note about anti-seize: please be mindful of the fact that when you open this bottle or even touch this bottle, it's like Pandora's box. It will get all over your hands. So I will grab a little bit, and I hope you can see this within the shot of the video. I will pull the fan backwards, put grease on the back, pull the connector forward, and behind the cone put grease, and on the cone itself. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my case, pull it that way, and then with my other hand I'm going to go behind the fan case and pull this way, and that's how you disconnect all of the fan grommets. I'm going to do the same to all four and probably cut away in the video. Here's how you do the bottom ones. Now the bottom ones would be a whole lot easier had I taken the CPU cooler off, so be mindful if that's all you want to do. That was a grommet that was already pre-lubricated, so I'm going to show you how to do the bottom grommets because that's probably one of the harder ones to do, especially the back rear one. But let's do a demo with this guy. I'm going to take a little bit of my lubrication. I suggest you use something that is at hand. If you have anti-seize at hand, use that. If you have Vaseline on hand, or Vaseline, or whatever you want to call it, use that. If you have dielectric grease on hand, I suggest you use that as well. Whatever works. Just be careful not to put conductive material, such as anti-seize, on electronic components, especially if this is a more sensitive computer, one that you actually care about. With the anti-seize lubricated, I'm going to grab the back and pull the fan forward, and then hopefully this guy can do this without any lubrication at all. I'm going to grab my pliers and pull this way, and I'm going to pull the fan towards the case. Grab, pull. That one's much harder because it doesn't have lubrication. And now I have my fan off. I'm going to set it aside. Now, because I'm reassembling this thing, and because I'm using my fan grommets, I'm going to do myself a favor and properly lubricate all of my grommets, or fan mounts, or rubber pins, whatever you want to call them. They're all really the same. And if you were to tear or break one of these, you can get these on Amazon. I have a link in my video about these to a general search for almost exactly what you need. You might have to get a different size, who knows, but you know, that depends on your configuration. Okay, cool. So the next thing I'm going to mess with is cabling. I'm going to unplug my SATA cable that goes to my hard drive and tuck it away. Typically, I would remove it with the cable. Now, this is going to be very difficult to shoot. The hard drive enclosure actually has some of these cables tucked, and some of these cables are zip tied together. That's no problem. These are your input-output cables. I suggest on a regular motherboard or on a motherboard for a gaming PC that you read the manual or watch a video about your motherboard specifically to see which kind of connection points you need. We're going to unplug this guy, get this out of the way, and reroute this. Tuck it out of the way. Okay, so these guys are interesting because they are a connector that needs to have, I believe, this guy depressed, but we don't want to mess with that capacitor and accidentally damage and destroy our board. So we're going to gently push with a screwdriver and pull up, and hopefully the cable connector will work. Alright, I've decided that I'm going to unplug this cable last because it's giving me a hard time and I don't want to damage these capacitors. This cable that you're seeing right here is your USB 3 port. On the front of this motherboard is a USB 3 connector, and all you do to remove that is to depress this silver piece inwards and then pull up. This connector is giving me a lot of grief, and I don't want to pull on it, yank on it, and flex the motherboard and ultimately destroy something that I don't want to. For my sake, I'm also going to unplug the CPU fan, and there is a power button that's right here that I'm also going to unplug. There's a power switch here that I'm also going to unplug. Now, I suggest you make a diagram or memorize, or however you want to do it, before you start unplugging cables. Me, I have this video and a couple of years of experience when it comes to building and disassembling PCs, so I'll be able to either rewatch this video or stubbornly struggle and manage. So we have motherboard case screws here, 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 and here, and I believe that should be all of them. Cool. Let's unscrew this guy. Okay, so I have all of the screws that are mounting the motherboard to the case unplugged. Now I just lifted it by the CPU cooler. As far as I'm aware, most CPU coolers don't actually mount their screws to the case. They just have holes or standoffs within the motherboard itself that allow it to screw itself on. I haven't removed the DIMMs at all yet, mostly because I don't necessarily need to, but it is best practice. I'm going to make room for what I like to call the lift off when you fully remove the motherboard. Now, this light is a bit annoying, but I have this cable here that was giving me grief earlier, so I'm going to slowly lift the motherboard up. Now, I want to give you as much visual as possible. You go up, and then right here you can tilt this way and then pull towards you. Great. I'll do a deep dive on this cable and the motherboard situation in a second. And this is exactly why I wanted to fully remove this, because of all the dirt and dust that is still in this case. Okay, so I guess all you really needed to do was just get a pair of pliers, grab them where they're thickest, and just pull up. That's annoying. Anyway, onto the reassembly. I mean, it really is just a reverse of all the steps we've taken. So, angle downwards, angle up, angle down some more, then down all the way, and so yeah, come back and take your motherboard screws and put them back together. Now the trick with those is please do not tighten them all the way, just in case you need to readjust. Like if there's a screw hole that's not, you know, all the way lining up, like this one wasn't, I was able to just micro adjust it, but if I tightened it all the way and King Kong'd it, I would have no chance in hell of getting it aligned the way I wanted to. Okay, cool, so we have all of our motherboard screws in. So now one thing I would do, once your motherboard screws are in, make sure you tighten every single one of them. Earlier I said keep a couple of them loose so you can readjust, but it's very important that you do that. Most of these screws actually act as grounds and proper grounds for different circuits within your motherboard, so you want to make sure that your motherboard is, you know, fully contacting to the ground points. Some motherboards actually get their ground from other systems, such as through the PSU. So, you know, like I talk about that in my, oh yeah, by the way, how you get this guy out, pair of pliers, grab it and just give her, dude. I mean, I was trying to get that little latch here out with like a automotive pick. I was like, nope, you just need to really give it some juice. Okay, so we have that guy in there. We had this little cable here that we need to reroute and put back. And most of these cables are keyed. If you see, there's a ridge, like a little mohawk there, and there's a slot. Oops, there's a slot right there. So we're going to plug it in. Really, these connectors, I mean, there's only one way to do them. Like this guy has a giant like ridge, so how are you going to put that backwards? You know, they make it really easy. Even on custom builds, they make it easy. Before I connect, however, I'm going to try and route. Well, no, I'll route after. So behind and in, and that's for our USB 3. And I'm going to plug it into our wiring mount right here. Now this wiring mount's giving me a lot of grief for really no reason. Grab my pliers, bend it back a little bit, tuck them, give them a little push. Cool. I want to put my CPU fan back on, right? And while I'm here, I also want to put my chassis fan back. I want to plug these guys in, and now that I have proper light, I can show you how. You can try and have them find the hole, but they like to flip-flop around, so I like to hold them steady and push through, and the second I have them through, I pull. But I'm not going to do the top ones first, because the top ones are easy. Trust me, I've made that mistake before. I'm going to do the bottom ones first. And get on over. And pull. Okay, now that bottom one's in. This one as well. Sorry if you can't really see. Bottom one in. This cable's kind of getting snagged up on something. It's kind of hard to find a way to get a plier in. Just lost the hold in it. That's fine. We can just tuck it, push it, kind of coerce it. I really wish they just did case screws, they're so much easier. Alright, so now it's in the hole. I'm going to grab it with my pliers and pull. Now we're in on the bottom fan connectors, and we can go up top here. Find the hole if we can. Here we are. And pull. Now we're in. And it's a lot harder when they're not lubricated. Now if you can be mindful of the mess, like I'm not being mindful of the mess, but if you can be mindful of it, you really don't have to worry about anything. So I have paste on my hands. I don't want to touch any of these components and short something out, so I'm going to go wash my hands and get as much as or wash my hands or clean my hands with a towel and get as much as I can off. Now what's next is my PSU. And what am I doing? We all make mistakes. Gotta drop it in from the top and then carefully, I think it's getting caught on a, oops, sorry. I think it's getting caught on a cable or something. Yeah, this cable right here that we must forget to plug in, that goes over there. Now our PSU should be able to seat properly without issue. Okay, seems to be trying to drop in. Okay, now our CPU, or I'm sorry, our PSU is now in. We can mount it, and I suggest you mount it first before you connect things because it's really heavy and it likes to shift around in the case. Really easy, just 4 screws. Get the light on there. 1, 2, 3, and then 4. It's my final one. Okay, so now we can mess with our light a little bit. Oh, to have a clean room, 4K cameras, and employees you don't pay. Okay, so CPU connector is really important because then the CPU doesn't get any power if you don't connect it. Our SATA connector, which would normally go to our DVD drive, I don't use it, but I also don't like forgetting to unplug it, but at the same time I don't have a SATA cable, so there's almost no need, so I like to tuck it away. And then our main motherboard connector, this is the arm I was talking about. Sometimes it gets sticky or stuck, so you can just grab some pliers like this and pinch. Now we're going to put it together by clicking it in like that. Our SATA connector that we had our hard drive in needs to be connected. Any of the ports, you know, is fine. I like to use the first port I see, or the first port in the list, and this port here is port 0. So we can connect it like that. And some people have some criticisms on how I'm routing this wire here. I've never had any issues, so whatever. Now we can take this guy here, which is our SATA to power, and click that. Now there are really good solutions that I could implement for this exact cable issue, because I think the main concern is that it will be caught by the case or be grounded to the case somehow or whatever. I'm not too concerned with it. Now we just do, like, what's really important is that we do a quick check all connectors, check back in the video or check back in the checklist that we had of what we unplugged and what we replugged in. This is effectively the same thing as putting in a new motherboard, aside from the CPU replacement that I did not do. I think I'll do a separate video on that or whatever, on how to replace a CPU or put a CPU into a new system, or how to shop for CPUs. Other than that, this is basically the essence of building computers. I mean, this is really it. All that's missing is maybe a graphics card, a video card, or a sound card, or whatever expansions that you want to put into the PCIe slots that are here and all this other stuff. You could put a Wi-Fi adapter here, but this has onboard Wi-Fi, so it really doesn't matter. Actually, no, the system does not have onboard Wi-Fi, I don't think. But yeah, this is essentially all building a computer really is, and I was able to do that concisely within maybe an hour. The biggest issue when you're doing custom builds, if you're trying to mod a case like this is like an OEM case for like an office or something, and you're trying to put, you know, gaming parts in it, you have to really worry about compatibility. But if you're starting from scratch, like with a Fractal G6 or a G2 or a Corsair case or something like that, they're really easy to work on, they're really easy to clean. This case, because it's cheap, has a lot of pin and welds or rivets. Like here, I can't fully disassemble this case down to its bare bones skeletal structure like I could do with a Fractal case, which assists me in cleaning, which assists me in general maintenance, which assists me in cable management because I can route them to the back. So this case is cheap, and it was manufactured cheaply, and that's the way they took it because they wanted to do it in mass production. If you're doing a custom build, you'll have all of those luxuries, but one amenity that you will not have and that you might struggle with is this connector right here. This connector is for our input-output buttons on the front of the case. On the very front of the case, you have a power button or a power switch. You have a HDD LED button, which tells you the activity of the hard drive LED, and a whole other sort of buttons, such as your if you have audio jacks for headphones in the front or anything like that, that all get routed from the front panel and connect there. On custom builds, they're not one giant conduit or one giant connector. They're actually free-floating kind of wires. Some of them are one wire or pairs of two, and they're mapped plus or minus, and they can be a real hassle to do. One bit of warning as well, I suggest the second that you build a PC or you want to build a gaming PC, connect those first, because typically the PSU will get in the way and other components will get in the way while you're trying to mess around with all of the input-output cabling from the case to the motherboard. Do that first and then worry about the rest later. It's one of the worst things in the world to do that. When I first built a PC, that was the last thing that we put on the list, and we had a real struggle trying to go from YouTube channel to YouTube channel on how to wire this, on which side is plus, which side is minus. It's a bit of a which connectors for power. It's a bit of a headache that you don't really need to deal with if you get it done from the jump and you are cognizant and aware of that issue. Really have for this recording, this sour monkey drink, not gonna lie, kind of garbage. I don't really dig it. I don't really dig it at all. Got a little bit of it on the CPU. See how nice a junker build is? You just have like beer spilling on your CPU fan. You don't really care. It's beer cooled now, guys. You know, like, it's so nice to learn on a machine that is cheap and that is not entirely important to you. So you might be asking yourself this question: oh, okay, so you fiddle fucked with it. Prove that it boots. And there you have it.